Hello and welcome to this intermediate puzzle series of pattern recognition. So here these puzzles will be rated 1200 to 1800. I'll try and do at least 5 depending how long they take per puzzle. Pause at any time if you need to think. And for those of you new to this, basically you solve a series of puzzles to kind of become familiar with patterns that appear in chess games. And you want to solve these puzzles more than once. That way, nice and slow the first time. But if you just solve them once and forget about them, you probably won't remember the patterns. But if you solve them multiple times, you're more likely to remember those patterns in your own games. All right, what do we have here? Kind of a little bit of a mess on the board. We have 4 pawns. Our opponent has 3. We each have they have an extra rook, I believe. And then we each have a knight and bishop. But if you want to look at, in your own games or solving puzzles, you want to look at checks, captures, and threats in that order. Now, our opponent has just moved their rook back to the back rank, and that left them open to a check. The only one I see would be this rook check here. So maybe that's the way to start. But don't just check because you can. Make sure there's a good follow-up. So let's see what we can do here. Once we check, our opponent can go where? The bishop is helping. And on average, it takes 3 pieces, give or take, to checkmate a king. Depends on their defenders as well. So we check. The only thing they can do is move their king here, which will attack our rook. At that point, we could move our rook on the diagonal, perhaps. So let's take a look at this. We check. They go here. Then we move the rook over, checking. The opponent can go to the corner or to the center, probably to the center because our knight will be able to jump up here and deliver a check. So the king will probably go to the center. We check with the knight. The king keeps moving. And then our rook can swing over and deliver the mate, protected by the knight. So I hope you got all that. Try and calculate as much as you can in your head, but pause if you need more time. If not, here we go. So check, check. The knight jumps in and helps, and that allows the rook to deliver the mate backed up by the knight. So, great little pattern there using the knight and rook there at the end, and the bishop was helping as well. All right, on to puzzle number 2. Here we go. We have a knight that just jumped forward attacking our knight, which is backed up by another knight and 2 pawns. All right, well, not by this knight because that is pinned by the rook over here. So we'd have to capture probably with this pawn or the queen even, because now our queen is under attack as well. All right. First thing you might want to do is look at material. So we have 5 pawns, our opponent has 5 pawns as well. We have an extra knight, but they have an extra rook. Okay, now we need to look at checks first. We're behind a little bit as far as material goes. So how can we gain the upper hand? All right. Now, when you're trying to figure out what to do, you want to look at checks, captures, and threats in that order. I've mentioned this many times, especially about the checks first because they're most forcing. So you have to look at all the checks available. Now, our queen well, the knight could check here, but it would just be captured by pawn or queen. But our queen, which is under attack, has several options. We don't want to capture this pawn and deliver a check or go here because we would be captured. But there is this, a check here. And now captures and threats, the second and third thing you want to look at, those are very important because here we can check and then capture an unprotected piece. So if we go here, check, what can be played? The king could move, but we're going to pick off that rook. So that's probably the best thing to do unless there's a mate that we're missing, but I don't really see any mate possibilities. So we'll go with that and then pick off the rook. Now we're just ahead by what? An extra knight here. Okay, on to the next problem. Puzzle number 3, we just had a capture. So we pretty much have to capture back. And we're going to go into an interesting endgame. Now, once we capture, white has to try and block by controlling the queening square for this pawn. Well, let me make sure I'm going in the right direction here. Okay. So anyway, we want to capture there. But now, all right, we're going up the board. So we need to keep the opposition. Oh, excuse me, not that way. We want to oppose the king. And now we grab that opposition. If the king moves to the side, left or right, then we can press forward. And we want to try and control the queening square. So, for example, if the king moves here, we can go here. If the king comes forward, then we can try and go up. Or can we? We do have to keep an eye on our pawn. But this would just get into endgame practice. I'm not going to play it out here in this video. And if you're an intermediate player, hopefully you've studied how to handle opposition in a king and pawn versus king endgame. All right, on to puzzle number 4. The knight is under attack here. What can we do? Well, do we have any checks if we want to take a look at those first? All right, I think this puzzle has shown up before in the past videos. So if we follow our strategy of looking at checks, captures, and threats, checks first, we have this possible check. But at the moment, the queen would just capture that. So maybe we could get rid of that queen. How do we do that? Maybe you saw this puzzle in the past. We could go here, capturing, and pause the video if you want to figure all this out in your head. But we capture, they capture, we grab their queen, the rook takes our rook, and then we go here, forking king and rook. So let's see how it plays out. Here we go. Check. And once the king moves, we can grab this. Then we're also attacking the other rook and the knight. All right, on to puzzle number 5. Let's see. Bishop is just captured. The obvious move would be to capture back. But then the queen could recapture, threatening a mate in 1, also attacking our rook. That doesn't look too good. So If we look at checks first, what can we do? All right. Well, we can move our queen along this half-open b file, but where? We don't want to go to b5 or the pawn will get us, b4 the knight will get us, so we kind of have to go here. Then we're checking. If the king moves to the center, we mate backed up by our pawn, and no matter where that king goes, he'll probably block with the knight first. So check, knight blocks, we check again, but now we have that mate. So, interesting little pattern there, using the pawn and queen together to deliver that mate. Okay, those 5 problems went by pretty fast, so I'll try and do 5 more. Here we go. King has stepped forward, trying to grab this pawn and get his passed pawn running. We could go after this knight, but we have to calculate, what will happen. If we take the knight, they take the pawn, then what? He has 1 move to get the king out of the way, and then 3 more moves to promote. So 4 moves. We have 1, we can push this pawn forward. If he captures, then we have 3 moves and we can promote. So, but we probably need to, we definitely need to knock that knight out. And then we start pushing this. And we end up promoting first. Now, if they go here, we can start harassing the king, centralizing our queen, trying to force that king to get in front of his pawn and block his own pawn. And then, I don't know, our queen should be all right. And once again, I'm not going to play this out. You can look at it further if you'd like on your own. But I'm going to try and do the next 4 problems. That way the video doesn't drag out too long. Because I did have a request in the past to keep these videos under 30 minutes. Especially if I'm only doing 5 or 10 problems. Okay, on to problem number 7. Queen has stepped forward, attacking our unprotected queen with a threat here. Do we just exchange? But then what do we do? Do we have any kind of good follow-up? Well, if we look at checks first, what can we do here? All right, I don't see any good checks. I mean, our bishop could go here or here, but it would be captured either way. So, our queen could check, but it would be captured. So any captures, you want to look at unprotected pieces, and then you can take a look at protected ones. But I don't see any advantage. So threats. Now, pause the video if you need to think longer. If not, I'm thinking we could go up here, forking the rook and the bishop. Now, if the queen drops back to protect the rook that is protecting the bishop, well, then we could just capture with our bishop and go up in material. So there, and now we're just ahead in material. We have, what, an extra rook. Okay, so problem number 8 coming up here. Our queen is being attacked, but if we look at checks, captures, and threats, what do we have here? Checks first. We have a bishop check, but it would just be captured. We have a rook check, very forcing. If we take, they have to take. That gives us time to check with the queen. And we're crisscrossing this way, that way. The king would be forced back to its original square. And then we can deliver a back rank mate. So check, check, and then the back rank mate here. All right, I hope you found that one, rated 1530. Let's move on to problem number 9. Okay, once again, a bishop is attacking our queen. What can we do? Do we have any checks? Well, we could capture the bishop, but then the rook would take our queen. So that check doesn't look so good. If we move our queen here, once again, we'll be captured, this time by the bishop. Okay. We have a rook check here, but we would just be captured. All right. Well, it looks like we probably need to do something about our queen. But, is our queen trapped? It could move here. If we move our queen down, but that gives our opponent time to save his rook that's being attacked by our knight. What if we just capture? Well, then they could take our queen. What now? Okay, this one is turning out to be a little trickier than I expected. They probably want us to sacrifice the queen, and give us time for an attack, but how? Or we could counterattack. We go after this pawn and their queen. Now, if they just take our knight, do we have a good follow-up? All right, that moved our knight out of the way. So, I don't know. Do we have anything after that? We take, they take. Our bishop moves here, attacking, but the queen could just capture that. Then what? We go after this pawn. We're closer to the king. Maybe we have a threat on the back rank over here. All right. Okay, so if we take, they take. Gives us time to move our bishop, attacking the queen. If they go here, our queen can go here. Or if we immediately, all right, I'm just going to go here because I think that, oh, they don't want that. All right. What am I missing here? Wow. What if they want us to go here? Does that do anything? Luring the queen over there, giving us time to capture and attack the queen. Nope, they don't like that. Okay, I'm having trouble in this one. And, you know, if you come across a series of puzzles where most of them are not too bad, and then you find a hard one like this, it might be a pattern that you're not familiar with. All right, I don't know what they want us to do. They don't want to take. Do we want to take that? No. Do we move our queen? They do want that. What? Why would they just take that and let us grab that? Really? All right, I might need to look at this one again. Okay. I mean, that's the obvious move, but I was expecting some trickier tactic. So if we go there, why would they just give up the rook? I mean, why wouldn't they just... Okay, they can't capture. If we go there and they take that... Huh. All right. Anyway, well, I should dig into this a little bit. Let me pull up the analysis. Maybe there was... Okay, I mean, now they want you to capture that. But if I look at the analysis... so they go there. Queen to h4 is the only move that works. You know, it saves your queen, which I don't know. I kind of was looking at that move first, but I thought, oh, there must be some hidden tactic here, but I guess not. So rook takes h6 is best. What if they just played bishop to d6 or d7? I mean, why even move that? I don't know. What if you just go here? Well, then you have the knight. Okay, the knight would be attacking. All right, so that's why you would have to capture here, but then the queen would capture, and now you're protecting your knight. Okay, so a little bit more calculation involved there. All right, let's move on to the final problem, puzzle number 10. Here we go. They just captured. The obvious move would be to recapture, fixing your doubled pawns. But they would have a passed pawn here. But if we look at checks first, that should do it for you. Pause the video if you need more time. If not, then let's solve this. Okay, we go here. A very forcing move with this rook. The only thing that can be done is to capture. That gives us time to swing our queen over, delivering a check. The king will move back to its original square, and then we can deliver mate. So check, check, and mate. A great pattern there with the pawn preventing the king from running towards the center and helping the queen deliver mate. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed these 10 puzzles. Feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.